Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Are you into true crime?
Do you like unsolved mysteries?
Strange and forgotten history?
Bizarre alien abductions and classified science experiments? Then check out Cruelty Podcast.
We're your hosts, Willow Ahava, along with my best friend and next door neighbor,
Lillian Asterius, and my husband, Merriweather Asterius. Maris, say hi.
Hello.
Maris, short for Merriweather, and I host Maris Mondays as a bonus episode each week to start your Monday with something strange and unusual.
While the rest of the week, Lillian and I present a true crime case under a monthly theme and feature known and not so known cases. We've done everything from Vampire Month to honeymoon murders to cannibal killers.
Cruelty Podcast is an independent podcast made possible by our Patreon members. If you would like ad-free listening plus additional episodes and perks, find Cruelty Podcast at patreon.com/cruelty.
Whoa, that's 4 whole episodes a week.
Linktree/cruelty has links to all our social media accounts as well as our Discord channel. Cruelty Podcast is a member of the Podmoth Network.
Hey, Twisted Listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder
And lists.
And we're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. And Diva and I are both exhausted. So this is going to be a quick ass intro right into murders.
Woo! Yeah, and happy St. Patrick's. No, not quite.
Tomorrow.
Before that.
Yeah. No, it's going to come out tomorrow morning, which will be St. Patty's Day because we're a day early.
Oh,
or
yeah,
a day
yeah, yeah.
late, I mean, on everything.
That's tomorrow. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And to your very Irish family as well, Cindy. Happy St.
Yes,
Patrick's
thank
Day.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Feeling the spirit. I'm Irish as well, but just a tiny sliver.
Just a touch. I'm less than I thought. So, you know.
Yeah.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to our very small
Yeah. To
Irish
our
family.
ancestors. Yeah.
Yeah, the few that we have in there.
Mhm.
Rory, however, is extremely Irish. He's basically just like Irish and indigenous and like that's like Native American and like that's it.
Yep.
That's all he
Pretty
is.
cool. Pretty cool
Yeah.
mix. Yeah.
Yeah. He is very proud of that. So
Yeah.
anyway, what are we doing? We're doing Spree Killers. This is part 2.
Part 2.
And part 1 was pretty great. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we split up the cases just perfectly because we each did an oldie and a new case, and then I think we split them up. So now I have my old one and you have your new one.
Correct. All right, so why don't we just get into it so that we can go to bed? Also, you guys, if there's like farting or anything weird on this recording, I'm not editing it out. I'm too tired. This is just going up as is. So Uncut. Yeah. Yep.
All right.
So here we go.
Okay. Well, you're not outside with any planes, so we should be okay.
No, although there is one going over right now, but you can't hear it because I'm inside like a
you have shelter.
Yeah, shelter very
All right.
lucky. All right.
Ooh, I almost heard it, I think. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start. I'm starting, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm going to start by, this is going to go long. But you know what? Go on this journey with me. I'm tired and I'm going to talk about Bonnie and Clyde.
Yay! This is a good
Yay.
one to go long on because like
Honestly,
everybody kind of knows it, so it'll be fun to like fill in the gaps.
It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I had a good time with it. So, okay. And I can rant about history and like poverty as well. So,
I love it.
So Clyde Barrow is one of our main guys here. He was born as one of 7 in rural Texas to itinerant farmers who lived in extreme poverty, basically in a shack in a swamp. At one point, his family didn't even have a shack. They were actually sleeping under their car or their wagon.
Wow.
Sorry, wagon, not a car.
I was like, how'd they all fit into their car? Wagon makes a lot more sense.
Underneath the wagon.
I get that. Yeah.
So then they upgraded to like a shanty shack, essentially. So like super, super poor.
Okay.
And this was in a swamp outside of Dallas. Bonnie was also from rural Texas. Bonnie Parker, sorry. She was also from a very poor part of Dallas. And when she was 15 in 1926, she dropped out of school to marry her boyfriend, who I believe she actually stayed married to this whole time, but he kind of just drops out of the picture pretty quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So she is married, but not to Clyde, and it doesn't seem to make a difference. Okay.
No. She actually got a tattoo of his name on her leg, which for the time it was like very saucy and scandalous for ladies to have tattoos at all. It was like, ooh.
Yeah, I can't believe anybody would do it.
Yeah. So in 1930, 19-year-old Bonnie meets Clyde, and it's like literally described by everyone as love at first sight, like this movie moment, right? And she was still married, but no one cared. And her husband had actually gone to jail for murder.
So she's just picking winners.
She's got a type.
Right. Yeah, she does. She's got a type.
Clyde was 21, 2 years older. And again, they're instantly in love. Shortly after they start dating, Clyde was arrested for chicken theft.
Oh, shit.
That's how he got his start, was chicken thieving.
That's so old timey.
Yes, very much.
That's wild.
I'm sure there's still chicken theft though happening out there, you know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
But this doesn't stop their relationship, because even though she kind of dates someone else, when he comes back out, she's like, fuck that guy. She gets back with Clyde.
We don't even know that guy's name. Like, we don't even know who he is.
No one cares. She's like,
nobody
meh.
cares.
Yeah.
Yep.
Clyde's number one. Actually, sorry, I kind of skipped over something very important here. I just said that they got back together when he got out of jail, but how did he get out of jail, you ask? He actually arranged sneakily for Bonnie to bring him his gun, and she actually smuggles it into the prison, and he escapes. And
sorry, this is before metal detectors, and he's actually in jail long enough for chicken theft that he needs to escape.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Like, how long do you get for chicken theft?
Yeah. So they're both arrested, and he goes back in prison. Sorry, this might have been too... No. Yeah, sorry, I got my shit turned around. Okay, I'm tired. I'm so sorry. All right.
No, and this isn't getting edited out, so this is the real deal, you guys.
Oh, uncut. Okay, anyway, so they escape. The escape works, but a week later, they're both arrested. Bonnie gets to go home. She's not like held accountable for the gun smuggling, but Clyde gets 14 years.
Holy shit!
For pulling this off. Yeah.
So she gets nothing.
Yes.
They must not have seen the thigh tattoo.
Yeah. They're literally like, you go home. You're just a girl. It's fine.
Shit, all right.
And so he goes at first to serve his 14-year prison sentence, and he serves his time. Spoiler alert, he doesn't serve that much time, but he serves what time he does spend at Easton State Penitentiary, which is a horrific, essentially a cotton slave plantation, pretending it's a prison, quote unquote.
They still have that plantation prison in Louisiana, which is insane that that's still a thing. But
These still exist, but this is one of those.
Ugh.
So you're literally working the fields all day long, like no breaks, no lunch break. You know, it's not like a normal job.
Right.
It's literally it's an 1850 year slave. That is what he does. He does not like it. Obviously, no one does.
Right.
And while there, unfortunately, Clyde is also subject to some really horrific sexual assaults.
Ooh, gnarly.
By a fellow inmate. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And he ends up actually killing his assailant, the guy who got kind of repeatedly attacked him, with a lead pipe, bashes his skull in.
I mean, can I just no comment that?
No comment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a prisoner who has a life sentence actually takes the fall for him, because he's like, I got nothing to lose. I did it. And Clyde's like, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That dude like stepped in and was like, fuck it, you know?
Yeah.
All
but
right.
it comes out later, I think, that's happened.
Right.
He also, in an insane move, has another prisoner cut off 2 of his toes with an axe so that he won't have to work the fields.
Wow.
Yep.
That is like dedication to like not working. That's the kind of energy we need just generally.
Doesn't want to work. Yep.
Don't want to work. I'll cut my own fucking toes off.
And this isn't an average work. This is brutal.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I know what you mean. But anyway, so he does it. He has 2 less toes, and he actually limps for the rest of his life because So shortly after this, it's unfortunate that he did this because shortly after this, his mom actually writes into the governor and gets him pardoned.
Wow. I wonder what she said.
So I actually heard that in this time period, it was really common for just anyone to get pardoned, even more severe criminals, because they were so overcrowded, the jails in Texas. So they were like, eh.
Oh, so she was like, listen, he stole a chicken and he pulled a gun. Please let him out.
And he escaped from prison. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so he serves less than 2 years. In 1932, he gets out. And by all accounts, this really harrowing experience in Easton turned him from like a small-time criminal to a really hardened criminal.
I think that's fair. And also like a really good argument even to this day against prisons. So
Yep. And he vows to everyone that no matter what, he's definitely not done doing crime, but he's never going back to jail and he'd rather die. So,
okay.
Very clear about it. And again, Clyde is like, hey, Bonnie, my girlfriend, do you want to go do some crime? And she's like, absolutely.
I've been waiting.
So after after an attempted robbery, she goes to jail They do one little attempted robbery together. Notice that a lot of their robberies are also attempted in all of these discussions because they're not that good at robbery.
Yeah, they're just kind of idiots.
They botch a lot of them. Yeah. Right. But they're trying.
They're doing what they can.
So he escaped the scene, but she went to jail briefly. But a grand jury is like, "Oh, you're a girl," and they freed her.
Oh my god!
Again. So they go back to it, and basically this is around the time when Bonnie and Clyde get together, a group of criminals that will become known as the Barrow Gang. I won't go through all the different changes in members because it's boring. But together, all these criminals and them go out and hit the road. Clyde is the leader. And pretty much they're driving around doing robberies, some successful, some not. And sometimes they're getting like $11,000, which is like insane compared to the like pennies Clyde was making per week, And
also $11,000 back then, like adjusted for inflation, that's got to be crazy.
Yeah, so they're taking home a lot of money. They also are killing people, 13 in total over their whole
spree. During the robberies?
A couple different types of context. So I'm going to go through some highlights as we go.
Okay.
Murder highlights, but I won't go through all of them. But that's the total death count from the spree in total.
Okay.
Okay. Also, they have a very cool car. I forget the specific name of the car because I don't care about cars, but it's unusually fast and goes much faster than the cop cars.
Oh, wow.
So Clyde was, I'm sorry, some of this is a little bit cool. Clyde was like a notoriously great driver. And he could like spin out and drift and do all this crazy shit. And he went much faster than the cops. So there was tons of cop chases and he always got away.
I kind of love that.
Yeah. And the cops were like, oh man,
It's like having a Porsche. He had like a what would that be, like 30s Porsche?
Yeah, it was a really good car. Yeah, which I'm sure they bought with all their stolen money.
Oh, yeah, the stolen money.
Yeah. They're also constantly stealing weapons and crazy ass assault rifles. And they create a massive arsenal.
That's so crazy.
Yeah. And keep in mind that this is kind of a golden age of crime and organized crime in America. There's lots of gangs. There's Pretty Boy Floyd. There's Ma Barker. And this is in part because it's the Depression, folks. And so people are poor as fuck. And so keep in mind the extreme poverty that these two came from and the backdrop of the Depression is one where cops and the government and authority figures were absolutely seen as the villains and the enemies, and like poor people were relating to poor people, right? And anyway, spoiler alert, Bonnie and Clyde come to be seen as heroes because they are poor people,
right? And they're doing for themselves. They're fucking figuring it out, even though they're killing innocent people. Apparently that's like still okay, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say there's a spectrum from like, okay, some things they do are not awesome, but then there's a few things where I'm like, that's a little cool.
And they're also like, just to be completely fair, because you absolutely know that this makes a difference, like they're good looking.
Yes,
they're a good looking couple,
actually really in love as well.
Yeah, they really are. Especially, she's like striking, yeah. So that helps with the public image for sure.
It does. For the time, they're stylish and kind of Okay, so here's some highlights from their time together. Clyde killed 2 cops in Joplin, Missouri, and you'll notice they kill mostly cops. I'd say like 75% cops.
My story was in Joplin too. That's crazy. Or like
Joplin.
Joplin.
Yeah. He basically riddles them full of bullets from a machine gun. After this gunfight, they escape and end up leaving some of their stuff behind. And when police find it, they find some undeveloped film that contains a series of iconic photos of them. One has Bonnie pointing a rifle at Clyde, and he's kind of smiling. They're joking. The other one is the classic photo of him holding her up in the air, right, in an embrace. And another photo, Bonnie's kind of posing to like fake look badass with a gun in one hand and a cigar in her mouth, which specifically the cigar was super shocking and unladylike for the time. Women didn't smoke cigars.
Right. So that was really like, I'm sure there were a lot of like kids from like bad homes that were like idolizing that, just like loving that.
Exactly. And likewise, a lot of people were clutching their pearls like, oh my God,
right.
These are terrifying people. And those photos blow up in the media, and that's what gets used all since then.
Right.
So, and I want to point out too, with these photos, you see something that's very clear about these guys is that they were not like on the same level as real mafia or organized crime or mobsters. They were regular kids who were basically cosplaying as organized crime, who looked up to mobsters and were just having fun trying to be them.
Right. And they were like fairly successful, but they still weren't that level. Like they became notorious, they became famous, but they were kind of sloppy and not great at what they did.
They had a lot of goofs. Yeah, they had a lot of bad days for sure. Clyde also killed an undersheriff named Eugene Moore and wounded another man in Stringtown, Oklahoma. He killed a man in Hillsborough, Texas. He kidnapped a deputy in Carlsbad, New Mexico. I'm just going through a couple random ones.
Yeah.
In June 1933, Bonnie and Clyde's car flips and catches on fire, and Bonnie is briefly trapped in the wreckage. And even though they are able to get her out, her leg was severely burnt, and she was actually disabled for like the second half of the crime spree.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And often, like, especially when escaping or having to run, Clyde would pick her up and carry her, which is kind of sweet.
I mean, fuck them, but like, that is sweet.
Yeah. Throughout, they have these elaborate shootouts with the police and escape. And again, not only do they have a faster car, but they have like giant assault rifles, like that are better than what the cops have. And the mob does this too sometimes, where they're gonna win the shootout.
That's so fucking crazy.
Yeah. They always escape the shootouts, like every time. In July 29th, 1933, however, one of them goes horribly wrong for the gang when Clyde's brother, Buck Barrow, who had joined the gang after being paroled from prison, along with his wife, Blanche, Clyde was like, hell yeah, brother, come with us.
Yeah.
Buck was shot and killed in this shootout, and his wife, Blanche, was blinded by shattered glass, and she was arrested.
Oh, shit. Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know that. That's fucked up.
Yeah, so that's a bummer. During their crime spree, they would also, this blew my mind, they would secretly arrange through like literally message in a bottle shit to meet up with their families in like parks and fields to have a barbecue and have fried chicken and home cooking and give their family money and gifts and like pay it forward.
So it's it's a little bit of like a Robin Hood scenario, but they just are also murderers, and you can't really overlook that because not everybody that they were killing is the type of person that you can necessarily feel sympathetic about.
Right. I mean, there's some where you don't feel bad as much, and then there's some where like one guy was just they were just wanting to steal his car and they shot him, and it's like, well, that's shitty. That's shitty, Right. Totally. Just kind of random. They also abducted tons of people just to steal their car and then like would drop them off later. So they didn't kill everyone they encountered. Right. It was kind of random. They abducted people a lot and then just dropped them off.
So just a means to an end, which is actually kind of good that they didn't kill them, Yeah.
And as this crime spree is unfolding, it's one of the first kind of soap operas of crime that plays out in the US media. And the tone of the media coverage was increasingly kind of like glamorizing and rooting for the couple right away. Yeah. And like I said, this is also because of like poor people are like, oh my God, these are my heroes.
Right.
But they are also just America's Most Wanted. The FBI and like all 7 million different states are like flipping out to catch them.
Right.
And in January 1934, they do, in my opinion, kind of the coolest thing they do. This is undeniably cool. I'm sorry, it's probably like horrible to say, but they actually break out 5 prisoners from the Eastham State Prison, where Clyde was formerly imprisoned.
Uh-huh.
Where he served that brief, grueling sentence. And along the way, they shot 2 guards who I believe didn't die, but they just blasted the place. They bust into a prison with machine guns, like, and break 5 people out.
They're just like, you guys are free now. Fuck this place. I mean, that kind of prison should have never existed. The fact that they still exist to this day,
I
like,
mean,
why are there not like court cases about
that's
this? It's kind of crazy.
Definitely the move I'm least mad at. And apparently
Yeah.
Clyde was like, that was always his number one goal. Like, even when he got into being in the gang, he was just like top of the to-do list on my, I want to do this.
Bust some homies out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's really cool. Okay, so April of 34, in Grapevine, Texas, they shot 2 highway patrolmen. A few days later, they shot and killed a police constable in Oklahoma. And I have like 6 more. Like, they shot a cop, they shot a cop, they shot a cop. You get the idea.
Yeah.
They shot many cops. Meanwhile, the family of one of the inmates they freed from that prison breakout, named Henry Methvin of Louisiana, tells police that Bonnie and Clyde and the gang have been visiting him and his family. So he kind of his family flips, not him.
Oh, I was like, damn, that's pretty fucked up. Also, why is he talking to the cops if he's on the land?
No,
But
sorry.
I get what you're saying. It was his family. Okay.
I phrased it weird. The family of that inmate kind of flips. And they offer to cut a deal with the police and give up Bonnie and Clyde in exchange for immunity for their son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, so that's kind of how this comes down. Meanwhile, this is actually even more fucked up. Henry did a double murder of 2 more cops alongside Clyde, ganging it up here.
Oh,
And
after he was released? Or after he escaped?
Yeah, but
wow.
he goes along with the gang. But police will actually later cover his involvement up in order to maintain the deal and lie and say Bonnie was the one that shot those cops.
Wow. So they don't give a fuck about cops' lives either.
Yeah, no. They just want that deal.
That's pretty interesting. That's pretty fucking interesting. Honestly, like the price they're willing to pay,
Yeah.
Wow.
May 21st, 1934, the FBI and all these different states of polices learn from this family that Bonnie and Clyde are at a party at their house, which is in, like I said, rural Louisiana. And 2 days later, they're going to be back. So 2 days later, May 23rd, officers famously hide in the bushes alongside the only highway that they could have taken to get to the house, waiting for them. And as they arrive, police essentially ambush. Oh, no, sorry. I wrote that down wrong. As they arrive, what they do is sneaky and shitty. They have Henry's father, because they know they couldn't beat Bonnie and Clyde in a fair fight. All these cops, right?
Right.
So they have Henry's father stop them in the road and pretend his car had broken down.
Wow. This is the thanks they
and
get.
Say, help
this
us. So of course they stop to help him.
That's so fucked up.
Yeah. So that's how they get him to stop, right? Because they knew they couldn't get them in a moving car.
Right.
And so police essentially confront the couple briefly, and when they jump in the car and attempt to drive away, they riddle their car with over 150 bullets, killing them both instantly.
That's so fucked up.
This shit is fucked up. Get ready for some more fucked up shit.
Oh, I know.
Their mangled, bullet-ridden bodies are filmed and photographed. Yep. And some of the officers take some of their belongings as trophies, just like rifling through shit. There's no crime scene like treatment whatsoever. And the scene, bodies and all, I actually wrote down once the bodies had been removed. And then I watched like a documentary a bit further and I was like, oh, wait, no, delete. Bodies and all, the crime scene is allowed to be overrun by onlookers who take souvenirs, cut pieces of their clothing off and just like touch the bodies.
Yep. And also, why did the cops kill them? Were they shooting at the cops? Did they just try to get away?
They tried to get away. Yeah.
They tried to get away. I'm just saying, like, I know the answer. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. No, there was not a lot of exchange, which, we know something that's cops that they love to do. Yes. One person also tried to cut off Clyde's finger, but did not.
Oh, Jesus.
People are disgusting. This is so 17th century right here.
It
like this
really is.
So 16th, 17th century. We have not progressed at all.
No, ma'am.
Yeah. So Bonnie and Clyde always intended to go out together. And even though they did try to escape police, like I think they would have easily done a shootout as well and died. Because they always said they'd rather be killed than arrested. 2 weeks before their death, Bonnie wrote a poem that's famous that she later gave to her mother, and it read, in part, quote, Someday they'll go down together and they'll bury them side by side. To a few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's termination for Bonnie and Clyde.
She wasn't wrong.
No?
She was not wrong.
Sadly, they weren't buried side by side, however, as their
Yeah.
families put them in their separate like family plots.
Yeah.
And briefly, I have to talk about like the legacy of Bonnie and Clyde to conclude
Mhm.
here, because obviously the couple inspired a fuck ton of movies and songs and TV shows and books,
Yeah.
including the iconic 1967 movie with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway playing the couple, which is a nonstop romance, right?
Yep.
In 2019, I guess there was also a movie that I haven't seen called The Highwaymen, which is like totally heroizing the cops that like hid in the bushes and the Texas
Right.
Rangers, which I'm like, ooh,
Mhm.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Texas Rangers are gross.
Yeah. No, fuck them.
Another important example, I picked the movie and then I was like, okay, my second example of Bonnie and Clyde pop culture is going to be the Jay-Z song featuring Beyonce.
I was going to say, you fucking better.
03 Bonnie and Clyde. And generally, it's that participating in lyrics and lingo where Bonnie and Clyde is kind of used like my ride or die person, you know?
Right. Right.
So that's a great song.
And there's also Serge Gainsborough.
Oh, yeah, it's another one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're huge in pop culture. And obviously, they also influenced a ton of other killer couples, as we talked about before, with Joanna Dennehy as well in the first part. And they influenced natural born killers, like I'm sure, like duh.
Definitely, which then influenced a bunch of idiots to go out and like
Which
kill people,
then
but
influenced other killers and killer couples. Exactly. So they've had
Yep.
this huge impact in pop culture and murder culture. Finally, sorry, and this is long, but I don't love Bonnie and Clyde, but I love the story.
Yeah.
I kind of love them a little bit. But I wanted to also point out that for people who like the sights of things, if you go online to roadsideamerica.com, there's a Bonnie and Clyde quote unquote bloody adventure trail where you can go see every location.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to add some to our murder map, which you can find on the Patreon. And I'm going to relink it, by the way, on the Patreon once I hit 300 places.
Nice. Awesome. Very fucking cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's hard with them because it's long enough ago that you can kind of, not feel bad if you do kind of glamorize it. Obviously, it's been glamorized like endlessly in our, society. They are murderers, but I see kind of, I mean, he just got 14 years for stealing a chicken and then breaking out of prison, seems a little weird.
I mean, like, also the reason it's hard not to have sympathy for them is from where they come from. And like, the last podcast, like 8-hour version of this did a really beautiful job painting a picture of the socioeconomic landscape of where they came from and how essentially Clyde had literally zero prospects. Like there was no way that he could ever not be in that level of extreme poverty because much like now, but even a little bit more extreme, the system pushed him to just that. Like there was no such thing as upward mobility ever.
No, it's intentional. They take resources. They keep resources from certain areas to keep people from being able to, better their lives or have prospects or, get anywhere.
So it's like
not
you almost can't blame people for turning to crime as a way of making money when they have literally no other way of making money.
I mean, again, that's not an accident, and that's people know that's what's going to happen and they do that on purpose. That is also an intended consequence. So it's not, none of this is by accident. So I'm kind of glad that they were, romanticized because it's kind of like a backfiring. And I think it's not lost on us that the fact that they were attractive and white is why they weren't just vilified entirely by the media.
Of course, yeah.
But, in the end, it's a class war. So I'm glad that that happened. So
and also, I think Bonnie and Clyde would have fucking loved the Bonnie and Clyde media. Like they would fucking if they can if they have been able to see it from fucking I don't know heaven ? Hell some other kind of plane, I think they absolutely would be jazzed.
Yeah I agree because I mean we're all a little bit narcissistic, aren't we, in the end?
But they loved the romantic like mobster image.
I'm sure they'd be happy with how they're generally remembered.
Yes.
Whew, okay, here's a man who need not be remembered at all.
Okay.
This is the story of Christian Charles Nielsen, and this takes place in 2006. Sorry, 2006.
Okay.
In Rumford, Maine, and the surrounding area. It's actually somewhere else in Maine. I'll get there. Maine has a lot of small towns. Oh, Newry, Maine is where this mainly takes place. It's mainly in Maine. Ha 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 ha. You can tell I'm tired. All right, here we go. So Christian Charles Nielsen was born May 2nd, 1975 in Rumford, Maine. He seemed, pretty normal, had a normal life growing up. His parents did divorce when he was 4, and about a year later, he and his little sister were given to his father full time because his mother wasn't emotionally able to care for them. So that's something kind of traumatic, I feel like that's definitely, a red flag. Often people say, there's nothing in his life to, indicate that anything would have been wrong. But to me, that's, 4 years old, that's a formative time.
Yeah.
And to have to be living with your mom for a year and having her not take care of you at that time is pretty traumatizing.
Oh yeah. Early shit like that is actually more formative than people know.
Realize. Yeah, absolutely. So he was raised in Maine. He even went to college for a while in the early 2000s, although he did not earn a degree. He did drop out, and he instead began working various jobs and eventually became a line cook at the Sudbury Inn in Bethel, Maine. So another kind of, I think, a little bit more notable Maine town. His coworkers described him as quiet, soft-spoken, and reliable.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure how this came to be, but he ended up living at a place called the Black Bear Bed and Breakfast, which was in Newry, Maine, about 10 miles from Sudbury, where he worked again. I've read and heard that he was also working at this inn, the Black Bear Inn, but I believe that this is false and he was just living there. And it was actually even supposed to be kind of short term that he was living there. But I think because it's an inn and he worked at another inn, it gets confusing as to whether or not he worked there. He very well may have just been helping out around the place here and there.
Gotcha.
But he was definitely a tenant.
Okay.
So this inn was owned and run by Julie Bullard, a 65-year-old woman who had recently relocated from San Francisco, where she had run a successful bed and breakfast for a while. The one in San Francisco was called the Church Street Bed and Breakfast, and it was on Church Street, as you can guess.
Nice.
It is now called the Parker House because everything has to sound fancy in San Francisco now for tech bros. So, yeah, no more Church Street Bed and Breakfast, which is, that name is quintessential San Francisco up until the time it was ruined by tech bros. And now it's Parker House. And
I can just picture the inside of it now.
Right? Ugh. So anyway, she decided to relocate to Maine for a quieter life, and her daughter, 30-year-old Selby, had come with her, and she had brought her 2 young children, who were, I believe, 5 and 8 at the time. Now, Selby and her children had moved with Julie because Selby had just recently become widowed when her husband and her children's father was killed in a car accident, which is really fucking horrible.
Oh my gosh.
So Selby had already settled in to Maine. She had already made a pretty close friend, 43-year-old Cindy Beatson. The two spent a ton of time together. They were basically besties right off the bat. You know how sometimes you just vibe with people quickly? That was kind of their situation. They were just fast friends.
Yeah.
So Julie had been having some trouble with the Black Bear Inn. She was actually planning on selling it. I believe she and Selby were going to move to New York, which is obviously not far from Maine, so probably would have been an easy move. And I do think that Julie had a good amount of money from the time she ran the inn in San Francisco. I think it was pretty successful. So she maybe was I'm 65, I'm just going to retire, I'm done.
Yeah.
So because of this, it's thought that perhaps she had asked Christian to move or told him he would have to soon, just because of the sale.
Right.
And there was another man living on the property, 50-year-old handyman James Whitehurst, who would have also been affected by this sale.
Okay.
James had lived in the inn, I don't know for how long, but he was in Maine settling a custody dispute over some of his minor children. And, he was a really reliable and helpful guy. I don't believe he was necessarily working there. I think he was staying there, but it was the type of thing where he definitely was helping out, staying around. It's a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
So anybody that's staying there long term is probably going to know.
Kind of like a resident,
Yeah. And a bed and breakfast, if you guys don't know, 99% of them, they're just a big house where the rooms are all kind of turned into individual kind of like living spaces. So if Julie lives in this bed and breakfast, which she does, and then these two guys do, they're basically like roommates, essentially. So they all know each other. I'm sure they all kind of help out around the place, you know.
Yeah.
So James and Christian, as a result, had kind of become friends. They definitely knew each other. They'd hang out around the inn. And on the morning of September 1st, 2006, Christian invited James to go fishing with him up in the wilderness about 15 miles from the inn.
Okay.
Now, again, we're in Maine. It's a bunch of small towns. They're all kind of already in the wilderness. So going 15 miles was like more than sufficient to get out into like fishing territory.
Sure.
The two set off to go fishing on this morning. They first stopped at Subway to get sandwiches and then headed out into the woods. I don't know that they actually did any fishing, but I know that they took a rest somewhere, and James was sitting on a rock while Christian was kind of walking around behind him, when suddenly Christian pulled out a gun and shot James in the head multiple times.
Oh my
Just
God.
like that. Out
Okay.
of fucking nowhere. Just
Jesus Christ. While they're fishing.
yeah, hey bud, want to go fishing? And then like,
Bup, bup,
oh,
bup.
I'm going to murder you now.
Okay.
Later, when he was asked why he killed James, he said that he found his presence objectionable. So he
Okay.
murdered him. It's like, bro, you invited
Right.
him. You invited him. Just what the fuck?
Sounds calculated though. It sounds
It
like,
does.
yeah.
It really does.
Hmm.
So once James was dead, which was pretty much immediate, Christian left and went to go to work in Sudbury or at the
Okay.
Sudbury Inn or whatever. Yeah. He came back the next day and used an axe and I believe also a saw to dismember James. And he also dug a very deep hole to bury him, but then decided to burn him instead using gasoline that he'd also brought with as an accelerant until there was very little of James left. So he came very prepared to dispose of James the next day.
Wow. Okay. Had a whole day to think about it, and
Yeah, decide what to do and
That's
still
his
brought
choice. Yeah.
options. So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Later they were like, well, why did you want to bury him? And they were like, did you feel bad that you killed him? And he was like, no, I just want to get rid of him before he started to stink. Like that's what you do. You're supposed to bury bodies.
Okay.
Even so, he ended up
Okay.
burning him. So Christian
Alright.
goes home to the inn. He keeps living there. And the next day he's like, man, Julie's going to notice that James is gone. So
Mhm.
instead of playing dumb, which would have been super easy, he instead decides to murder Julie.
Ugh.
So the next day or two, either like 1 or 2 days after killing James, he broke down Julie's bedroom door while she was sleeping and shot her to death while she was in her bed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It is. Like, what the fuck? He
Jesus.
then dragged her body outside and literally cut her in half. Cut her body in half.
But
Yep.
can I
Mhm.
ask which direction?
I'm gonna assume across like her waist, not all the way up and down.
I don't know why I pictured it up and down. That was so demented. What's wrong with me?
That
It's
is
late.
demented.
Why did I picture that?
Dude, I don't know.
I've watched too many horror movies where that happens. I
I
think.
immediately thought like Black Dahlia.
Right,
You
I-
immediately went to horror
I'm-
movie land. Yeah.
Immediately. Yeah, that's what I pictured. Okay.
I mean, both are dark places, but I think mine is probably
More
more
likely,
accurate.
yes.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
like the path of least resistance, to put it in a
Yeah,
really
I
terrible
think
way.
it's more challenging the other way. It's more of a horror
Yes.
movie thing, less of a
Yes.
real life thing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
he then took her body and just fucking put her in a bush. He just dumped her body in a bush outside of her own fucking inn.
Okay.
Now, at some point, I think he called his dad and was like, hey, I'm going to be taking over the inn for a few days because Julie's away on business. And this, I think, has caused rumors that he was killing her to take over the business, but I don't really think that that's true.
Okay.
I don't think that even he could have thought that he would get away with this and be able to run the inn. I think he was just trying to buy himself time.
Yeah.
2 days later, on September 4th, after not having heard from her mother, Selby came by to check in, and she brought her friend Cindy Beatson with her. The two come into the house. They're talking to Christian. They're like, where's Julie? Selby's like, where's my mom? Christian's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know where she went. And he kind of starts talking to Cindy, and then Selby goes looking for Julie and goes into her room and sees all of the blood in bed because he didn't bother to clean it up.
Oh my God.
And she turns and flat out asks Christian, did you kill my mother? Yeah.
I would
straight
just
up,
back away if that happens. Don't be like,
right?
have a good day, bud. Hope you're doing.
Yeah, like, oh, guess she's not in here. See you later, friend. Like, yeah. But she straight up fucking asks him.
Ugh.
And in response, he just shoots her to death. He has got the gun on him. Obviously, he's going to do this either way. And then as Cindy's trying to like run away, he shoots her to death as well. He then goes to his dad's house and borrows a chainsaw. And he cuts these two women entirely in half as well. And he's like dismembering that. Yeah, it's fucked up.
Holy shit.
Yeah. He then drags them also outside of the inn and just dumps them kind of in the woods. Now, this next part is trigger warning for you and everybody else, but I do want to mention it. Either, I think it was before he killed these two, he shot all three of Julie's dogs.
No, don't even tell me.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't tell me.
I'm sorry. I know. I just want to add that in because I think it adds a level of like what the fuckness to this.
Oh, it makes me hate him more. It makes me hate him more for sure.
Way more. And one of his excuses was like, oh, that dog was way too old. Like he was like 12 years old. That's too old for any dog. And it's like, so on top of being a murderous piece of shit, you're also an idiot who has no fucking clue what he's talking about. Like, you just want to kill the dogs. Like, there's just something wrong with you. Just admit it. Like,
stop trying to make a rationale for something so horrible. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, all of this is fucking terrible.
Ugh.
So he then hung out for a little while and apparently called his dad and stepmom and had them come over. Once they were there, Christian confessed to what he'd done, and his stepmother called 911 while the men waited. When police came, Christian cooperated fully, giving them details on where to find all the bodies, saying, you're probably not going to find James, but here's where I left him. Like, good luck to you. And they did find like burned remains. I don't know that there was enough to really identify him, but between, the confession, the fact that there were like bone fragments and this man being missing, I think they just assumed, they took it on, on Christian's word that like that was who it was.
Yeah.
The police did find all the bodies. They found the dogs. They were like, what the fuck? So they arrest Christian and he gave like a 2-hour interview wherein he confessed to everything. When asked if he felt remorse over the killings, he said, what difference does it make? They're dead and I'm alive.
Oh, the difference is that you did it, my friend.
Yeah, like what the fuck?
Dumb.
So the guy's just dead inside, obviously.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is when they asked him, well, why didn't you kill your dad? Like when he came over and you knew he was going to turn you in. And he's like, well, that's my dad. Like, I couldn't kill him.
What an asshole.
Yeah. And it's also like, dude, you don't have feelings. You're just like mimicking what you think somebody with feelings would say to that.
That's a classic psychopath thing. They mimic real people feelings.
Yep. Exactly. And I think the only reason he didn't kill his dad is because like he's trying to appear somewhat normal, which like too late, bro. Like that's not a thing. But anyway, while in jail awaiting trial, he actually attacked another prisoner and had to be transferred. And during this time, he also pled not guilty. So I don't know how you do that after, a 2-hour confession and like pinpointing where all the bodies are.
Narcissism much, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
He was also assessed by psychiatrists who found he was suffering from schizoid personality disorder, as well as some form of autism, among some other things as well.
Okay.
That being said, they did decide that he was not having an episode at the time of the murders, so he was found competent to stand trial and also to be charged. He then went on a hunger strike, losing over 50 pounds. He's like, 5'9" or 5'10", 5'11", something like that. He got down to 103 pounds. Like very, very fucking skinny. Okay. And a judge actually gave the prison the go-ahead to force feed him using a feeding tube. And just before they were scheduled to do that, lo and behold, he decided to start eating again on his own. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to 4 life sentences, and he is still in prison to this day. There is that show, Signs of a Psychopath. Do you know what that one is?
Yes, yeah. I love that show. Oh my God.
So he's on this show and his interviews I just looked at the YouTube versions. The interviews are fucking wild.
I just called it. I was like, he's a psychopath.
Yep.
And there he is on the show about psychopaths.
On the show. Yep. I almost jumped ahead and said it right then, but I was like, I'm going to get there in a second. If you watch these, they're actually really fucking scary because you like, okay, we talk about a lot of serial killers and murderers and whatever, but like it's still disconcerting when you see somebody behave the way this guy behaves. Like, it's almost like Israel Keys level, but like even more creepy because he's just so flat. You know what I mean?
It's classic psychopath stuff. You've got to check it out if you like Discovery ID shows. I think it's one of the best, and they're like 30 minutes, and they just kind of go through an interview and have like analysis. And because the psychopath is like a really specific type of dude.
Yes.
Or lady in some cases, and it's like they go, and all of them are the same. Like, okay, shallow affect, imitating feelings, or like, they're all very consistent.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, he said that he had been like, you know how some people are like, oh, I knew when I was 5 years old that I was destined to like be a singer. Like, I knew that I wanted to like do this when I grew up, or I knew I was this way. He said when I was 7 years old is the first time I knew that like my purpose in life is to kill people. And he has had urges to kill people for, 20 years before he finally acted on it. Jesus. So yeah, very, very fucking crazy that he
you wonder how many people with those feelings are just walking around quietly, like
like not doing it. I mean, the weird thing is, if you're like actually a psychopath, there's literally like nothing keeping you from doing it. And that's the craziest part, because like actual like right and wrong and emotions, they don't actually appeal to you. They don't work on you. So
yeah. And also I think there's something about that personality type or that condition where you're not going to be like, I should get treatment for this or something. Because there's also like an element of narcissism to it where you like,
you're
like,
people like enjoy it. Yeah. They're like fine being in that headspace. Yeah. So I think whoever's walking around doing that, it's just a matter of time until they fucking strike, which is like super scary and interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, yeah. So there it is. Those are our two cases. Mine was a little shorter, which makes up for yours, so that's perfect. Yes.
Also, side note, this inn is still open. Were they dismembered in the inn?
No, I think they were dismembered like in the yard, but but they were all murdered in the inn.
Yeah, it's still open. You can stay there.
Fuck, we should do that? Question mark?
I put it on the murder map while you were talking.
Perfect. Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you.
It's a beautiful house. Oh my God. There's like scale of house that only exists on the East Coast. It's like, God damn. Like that is a massive house.
Yeah. Those exist in Tennessee too. Have you ever been to like all the old plantation homes, like in that area, like outside of Nashville? I've never seen anything like it. And like I've driven through like the richest areas of like Beverly Hills and Bel Air, and like they don't like these houses.
I mean, like
are incredible.
I mean, that plantation homes are one thing, but like I mean, on the East Coast, there's a thing where like just regular residences are massive.
Yeah,
it's like in a normal, like humble street, and you're like, why are all these houses so fucking big?
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about that. Like, what do you do with all that space? I guess you turn it into a bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
exactly. And hopefully you don't get murdered in it. So, yeah, pretty fucked up. I also wanted to point out, I didn't really talk about this very much. The two kids. Their dad, mom, and grandmother all within like a year. It's so fucked.
Jesus Christ.
I feel like a piece of shit for not mentioning that sooner.
Yeah.
But again, we're tired. I actually had notes about it, and I think I just like skipped over them. Yeah. They were like 8 and 10 years old by the time they had lost basically everyone they were close to. I cannot imagine what that's like. It's fucking terrible. Anyway, so fuck this guy forever and ever and ever. But yeah, that's it. There it is.
Okay, we did.
Yeah. What are we doing next week? It's my turn. It's my turn. It's my turn, right?
Yes. We just discussed it.
Yes. So we're gonna do murders motivated by money. Murders motivated by money.
It's an omnipresent theme. It's everywhere.
It is. I would like it to be more specifically like business partners, people who, not just like wives like killing their husbands for insurance.
Okay.
That's tired. We've done that. I want more where it's like, for like a business kind of game.
Like more of a scheme or a scam too? Or
yeah, exactly. That would be fine.
I'm going to go through and delete my wives.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I already started listing.
I just feel like that is its own list, like murders for insurance money, like life something insurance, like that. Yeah, like that's its whole own thing. I want to do things where it's like, people who are good enough friends or close enough or trust each other enough or whatever to like go into business together, and then the shit falls apart and murders happen, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So
okay, all right,
that's my idea, guys. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Sorry, this was a little. We're just tired, but we're doing what we can. We're getting back on track. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for continuing to listen, like, rate, review, share. We love you guys. And until next week,
Stay.
off our
Liz.
list. Bye.